Namaskar. Again, we are going to talk about Ajanta. This time, Dr. Rajesh Kumar Singh is going to give his lecture demonstration on the paintings of Ajanta, and he will tell you each and everything about the paintings of Ajanta, about the Jatkas, about the narratives, about the uh, various things, the color combination, obtaining of color, the history, the story, everything that we are going to listen from the mouth of Rajesh, all the references that he has. And we don't need much to say about Rajesh Singh. He's an art historian from Baroda, and he has been the fellow of Ministry of Culture. He worked with Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. He taught at the University of Baroda, and so many things. He has written already 4 published books on Ajanta, and 3 more publications are coming on the way. With this little information, introduction about Rajesh Singh, I welcome you, Rajesh, again for your lecture on Ajanta painting. Please start.
Thank you, Kailash. Uh, I had the chance to present a little introduction about the architecture of Ajanta, and today I have the chance again to speak about Ajanta, but as Dr. Kailash Mishra already informed us, it will be on the paintings. Actually, as we know, the paintings of Ajanta are world famous, and it has attracted the attention of scores of scholars in the last 2 centuries. And so I have the advantage, the benefit of having read the works of many great pioneers. And I bring to you here a gist of the available knowledge, right from the times of James Ferguson. Then there was James Burgess. After that, Griffiths was there. And he was followed by scores of many other scholars. Yazdani. And latest, we have a great stalwart by the name of Professor Dieter Schingloff. He spent 5 decades on the study of Ajanta paintings alone. And then we have another great German scholar called Professor Dr. Monika Zen. She spent nearly 2 or 3 decades also. But she focused more on the non-narrative paintings. So a gist of all I'm going to present to you here. I must in the beginning tell you that I have not devoted focused attention on painting. So there will be very little of my individual research. As it is, this presentation is not meant for advanced researchers. This presentation I have tailor-made for general audience, students, non-experts, students of history, Buddhology, art history, archaeology, and educators. So I have tried to place it in more general sense, and I will avoid going into nitty-gritties and details, for the purpose of this lecture. So I begin here with a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, it is
All,
there. Please start.
all right, one second. So here, not this is a nice photo. My friend Sri Prakash Lokhande, he has taken when he went to Ajanta. Looking at this photo, not many people will be able to associate that this is Ajanta indeed. And looking at this photo, you will have no question as to why this particular location was chosen, you know, by the ancient monastics for carving of the caves, because they were always in love with nature, jungles, mountain, and they generally preferred uh, a secluded place because it is ingrained in Buddhism, renunciation of worldly life, etc., for the monastics. So this photo will, and even today in 21st century, Ajanta is somewhat secluded. The nearest city with a railway station and is Jalgaon, which is 60 kilometers away, and then district headquarter Aurangabad is 100 kilometers away. So even today in 21st century, Ajanta enjoys its seclusion, and it's not a polluted place today. There are no industries nearby. There are no polluting scenario is still nearby. So it's still beautiful. This is a photo again taken by my friend Prakash Lokhande, who is a photographer, and so I'm showing you his photograph. Uh, I will describe to you through this particular visual uh, how the paintings were made. That is not only in on this scarp, but also in time frame. So let us understand how this is how this whole thing is. These are the ghats or the slopes of the Western Ghats. Entire Western Ghats, stretching for more than 2,000 kilometers, is now declared as a wildlife habitat by the UNESCO, and it is now recognized for its ecosystem and many kind of wildlife. Many rare species of plants and creatures are there. And so these are the ghats, slopes of the Deccan Plateau, and the particular place where this has been carved is between Jalgaon and Aurangabad. As I said, as you descend the ghats, you will meet this place, and this whole ravine has been cut by the water. There is a waterfall over here, not visible in this photograph, and the waterfall was initially over here. So in the millions of years, wherever where waterfalls have a nature, they erode, they lead to erosion, and they cut the cliff, from what is called in geology the plunge, from the plunge, and so it recedes, it keeps receding, and so in the course of time it receded like this. And the water also has another nature. The water is flowing from here to there, and so there it leads to coastal erosion. So erosion is greater on that side than on this side. So this whole thing has been worked out actually by water only. So this is something of geological interest. But if you see this place and that place, once upon a time, millions of years ago, it was one piece. You could walk from here to there, and like this. And this has been cut. So this is very interesting, and and this whole piece, it's like one piece of rock. That is why we call it monolith. Mono is one and lith is stone. So entire Deccan Plateau is a huge thousands of kilometers of basalt. This rock, it came from the volcanic eruptions millions of years ago, and it's quite porous. Why there are so many caves in the Deccan? Like more than 1,000 caves are there in Maharashtra alone, and there are so many in Karnataka and Andhra. So because this is not very difficult to carve, and it may appear to us that how these Buddhists excavated these difficult mountains with human hands, but actually it's not very difficult. It's not like granite, it's not like sandstone, it's not like any other stone. It's not very difficult to excavate. And so how the excavation began, I'll talk a little bit about this. This scarp has a nucleus. This is the center. That is cave number 9, and that is cave number 10. These two are temples, ancient temples. These were the two temples, and these two temples had monastic residence or dormitory for the monks to stay. So nearby, one that is cave number 12, and this is cave number 13, and there is a cave number 15A over here. So these three small caves were carved for the monks to stay. So even like today in Tirtha, in pilgrimage places, you go, you have temples, and then you have these lodges or dharmshalas, or the dormitories for people to stay, or inn. So like that. So in the earlier times, it was very simple. Uh, Temples were for worship, they were not for dwelling. So no cells, no rooms were made for dwelling inside the temples. That was the scenario in the earlier times. I must tell you in between that Ajanta was developed in two phases. First phase was in the pre-Christian era, first century BC and second century BC. And the second period of Ajanta happened in 5th century AD. So right now, what I'm describing is about the pre-Christian times in the 1st century and 2nd century BC. So these are the caves. Let us understand, because they have paintings, and I will come to that. So in the earlier times, this cave number 9 has paintings and 10 has paintings, although very badly damaged. And because they belong to the 1st century BC and 2nd century BC, they are among the oldest surviving paintings from that antiquity, and to be rivaled with Pompeii, in ancient Greece. So that is why these paintings are so important, and they depict a world of situations and stories and many other things, and therefore it is a matter of great interest to us to understand the history of human civilization, the history of our culture in the past, India's culture, world culture in the past, the Buddhist religion in the past, the values and philosophies, belief system, and even material culture, because you see architecture there, you see utensils there. You can study what kind of buildings you had in the 2nd century BC just by looking at the kind of architecture which is depicted. So there are many reasons why these paintings are of interest to us. So having made this a small description about these caves of the earlier period, now I will come to the 5th century AD. For 500 years almost, or 600 years, no new architectural development happened at this site for some reason or the other. So in the 5th century AD, what happened when I will try to describe it in a situation which is not mystical at all for general audience. It was a situation just like you and I would face any time. Suppose now you come in 5th century AD and you see here these two ancient temples, and they were probably living temples, and you have to make new caves. Whoever you are a monk, or you are a king, or you are a merchant, or you are whoever you are who were in charge of making new temples. So how will you begin the temples? Because you see the elevation of these temples, they are the closest from the riverbed. So it is very clear to climb up to these temples from the riverbed. and you will not generally carve the next edifice over here, because this is quite high from the riverbed, and you will have to make a path to go there. And why will you make a cave over here, which is such a long distance from there, at least 300 meters or so, or maybe 400 meters or so. So not only the distance from the earlier temple, but also the elevation from the riverbed. There are two factors here, because access to that place where you want to carve a cave is very much important. It was important even today, because as a tourist, if you are going there, you will have to make certain climb, and it's difficult to climb. And if you are making a cave with so many hundreds of people involved in the making of that architecture, or doing the work over there, climbing up and down, because either you have to climb down from above or climb up from below, and so you will not generally select a place at such an elevation, at such an height. So even by simple reasoning, it would appear that this would not have been the first cave to begin in the first 5th century AD. The first likely candidate would be these nearest locations, would be this location, because that is cave number 11, which our studies, Professor Spink's study and my study, we too have studied in these aspects, and so our conclusions are similar, same. So this was excavated and like this. So it's started expanding from here, and then expanded from here. So this is how it happened. Now I will. So all these caves, all these edifices, they all belong to 5th century AD, and all of them do not have paintings, because in the end I will have opportunity to describe to you that something has happened in the 5th century AD when they were excavating this edifice. When they were all at least 20 caves were planned together. In my study, and Professor Spink has already shown, he is a great scholar, and I must pay my sincere gratitude to him, because I learned a lot from him, and we are at loss that he passed away last year after having published 8 great volumes and dozens of articles on Ajanta research paper, and he has advanced our knowledge to a great extent about the understanding of Ajanta. And he is more famous for his short chronology on Ajanta. And earlier we had a belief that it must have taken many centuries, even for the second phase. But he was successful in putting across a theory which is accepted by a majority of scholars today, although some scholars still do not agree. But my own research in the last 2 decades or so has reconfirmed me, at least, that Professor Spink's chronology of Ajanta is quite credible. He proposed that the second phase of Ajanta, the 5th century of Ajanta, was developed between 462 and 477 AD. We must get into chronology to talk about paintings, because nothing exists in vacuum. Einstein has told us that time is the 4th dimension. If you shift 3 decades before, the history of India was different. If you go 3 decades later, the history of India was different a few decades ago. But now more and more research is happening by various scholars from throughout the globe in various disciplines, which is telling us that this is the period to which the later phase of Ajanta must belong. And more research in the future will give further light on this. But having said this, now we will. So there are this is something which you would like to take a notice of, that we are right now in the 5th century AD. We are situated in the 2 decades, 460s and 470s. In my latest works in 2000. 20, I have published 3 monographs and a few essays, and one is in the press and 2 more coming. So because I've last 3 or 4 years I was doing some intense research, and in spite of having gone into an exercise of making a huge amount of data collection, historical data collection from all the sources available from those times, from iconography, from coins, from inscriptions, from the kings and rulers, and from the iconography, and from the textual sources, the literature of those times, and even the science branch has done its own analysis of things. So it looks like all I have been able to do is make a little adjustment to Professor Spink's theory. And so I believe personally, I have proposed in my research work that it was probably begun in 460 AD rather than 62 AD. Just a difference of 2 years in the beginning. And if you wish to ignore, that's fine. It's just okay. Nothing is going to collapse in 2 years. And so now I'm going to next slide and tell you about some of the students who would want to know why the paintings were created. The students of art history, archaeology, they do not need to know this because they already know why the paintings were created. They were meant for decoration. Yes, of course. We also want to decorate our house with as much embellishment as possible. And decoration is always a part of architecture. There is no need to assert on this. But what needs to be asserted is that the paintings were done to show and depict the teachings of the Buddha. The teachings of the Buddha are there in the Tripitaka. We have Pali Tripitaka, we have Sanskrit, the Chinese Tripitaka, the Korean Tripitaka, the Tibetan Tripitaka, the Burmese Tripitaka, the Japanese Tripitaka. So there are so many Tripitakas, and all of them have little difference in versions, but those contain the words of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha. And also, apart from Tripitaka, we have something called non-Tripitakas are canonical literatures, and you have non-canonical literature called, sometimes also known as para-canonical literature, like Ashwaghosh, the works of Ashwagosha, Dharmakirti, etc. So they are not a part of canonical literature, but they are Buddhist literature, like classical literature, poetry, like that, and Arishura's Jhatakmala, etc. So these things where the Buddha's teachings, the legends about Buddha, etc., were there in the canonical literature, in the scriptures, Buddhist scriptures, as well as in literature, that is Sahitya. And the teachings of the Buddha were also then reflected in the painting. So what the writer did, the painter also did the same thing, and it was also in theater. We do not know much about theater, but it was also there. People performed it, people used to recite it. So the pool of the literature and the pool of the painting were the same. That is the teachings of the Buddha, which people learned by heart perhaps in those times, and the monastics were supposed to read. And those paintings, they show the paramitas. They do not show everything that is contained in the Buddhist scriptures. Like paramitas are perfections and virtues in Buddhism, and so there were in the Pali canon you had 6 paramitas called parami, and in the Sanskrit canon, in the Mahayana canon and other canons, later canons, you have the 10 paramitas. So you have Dan Paramita, Shila Paramita, Shanti Paramita, Virya Paramita, Dhyan Paramita, Pragya Paramita, Upaya Paramita, Pranidhan Paramita, Bal Paramita, and Gyan Paramita. These are like various stages of enlightenment. So Dan Paramita is like generosity, giving the alms. Even today, there are people who believe in giving. We give away, do charity. It is considered a virtue in all religions, in Islam, in Christianity, in Buddhism, in Jainism, in Hinduism, in many religions, and even in non-religious life. So it is considered to be one of the virtues. So Buddhism is all about, perfecting one's self and one mind, one's souls, etc. And then Shil Parmita is morality, how you must conduct yourself. Shanti Parmita is perseverance, the forbearance, you know, and Viri Parmita is like that. So this is a common knowledge now to a student of Buddhism, and you may do your own research even on internet. You will be able to find a lot of information about this. But in this lecture, although it is introductory, I'm trying to focus on things which you are not likely to find on internet so soon or from other sources, or even if you find it, I just wish to simplify some of the difficult aspects to you. This is another ocean paramitas, and in the Pali tradition, you had only 6, and later on, other 4 were added. Coming now fast to paintings, because there is so much to talk about painting. I will describe to you the process of the painting and also show to you through visuals. There were 4 stages, 3 stages mainly. Plastering first before painting on the rock surface in the architecture, in the mountain, the caves were carved, those buildings were carved, and you had to do first the plaster, then drawing was done, and then coloring was done. And after that, I will also tell you in brief how the pigments were made, what are the composition of the pigments, and then I'll tell you a little about our guilds and artists, how we are able to see the work of the different artists who were at work. So here is about plastering. I have brought you one visual only to show you that the rock, after you have excavated your architectural space, then the wall had to be rough, had to be rough so that it can hold the plaster. This plaster was applied. As you can see, there are 2 layers of plasters. This is first layer and this is the second layer. First layer is little, the particles are little bigger, and the second layer is little smoother. And chemical branch of the Archaeological Survey of India has done chemical analysis of this. Most recognized name today is Dr. Manager Singh. He was posted in Ajanta for almost 2 decades, and he was in the science branch, and he has done, and I'm going to show you something from his research later on. But he has he said that this plaster was of course with clay and husk, and but also on the river bank you have silt. So in this photograph you can clearly see the silt, and the amount of clay is very little, not more than 15 and 20%. Large amount was only clay, and so a lot of sand is there because of the and river I have already shown to you. So the silt was taken from that riverbed itself, and used for this plastering. And when the plaster was still wet, the final coating, then the color had to be applied, so that when you apply the color will go inside this plaster surface and become a part of this. And that is why the color has not come off even after 1500 years. So this was the part of the process, and more on the plastering I will share something to you later on. What you see here, orange color, something like this. So this is basically brick. It has also been found that one method or process of preparing the plaster is not found. In different caves, in different walls, in different area, there was different method of making plasters. Very different kind of plasterings have been done. So there are also evidence, as seen in this photograph, that powdered brick, brick powder was also used. And bricks have been found at the site, and bricks have been found throughout India in every archaeological site. So technology of brick is very old. In fact, they used to make better quality of brick in those times than we are making the bricks today. So this is a little about plaster. And as you can see, the color was never applied over here. In this photograph, I'm going to be talking slightly later more that Ajanta was uh, abandoned. Ajanta was abandoned, and many other sites were abandoned in 477 AD. And I personally, after my research, my own conclusion are in total conformity with the research of Professor Spink, that something happened in 477 AD and the caves were abandoned. There was a military situation. And even this photograph will be able to make a small demonstration that something had happened. So if you were the artist who carved this place, who applied this plaster, then why did you not do the painting? See, there is no trace of painting, no trace of painting, no trace of painting. Plaster is visible, but painting is not visible, not a trace of painting. And many other places you will be able to find. In every cave you will find. Not one, but hundreds and thousands of proof, if you want, will be visible to say the same thing, that something happened and people just left the work and they went. They went and never returned. And definitely something bad had happened. And Professor Spink proposed that there was a war scenario, military scenario, but I have some different ideas which I will share later on. So after that, when you have done the plastering, then you do the drawing. Okay, so you see, this drawing is preserved because it was never painted. You can see here also, the painting was never done. But something very interesting is visible. This photo is from cave number 26. And here it is lime, and I do not know whether plaster is here or not. So it seems that they simply applied the lime, but because no trace of plaster is visible. So as I said earlier, you have different processes, different artists, different guilds, different patrons, and they had very different ways of doing things. Here you can see clearly that they simply applied lime over here with some chemical composition, and they applied these drawings. They did the drawings. This is from the famous Mahaparinirvana scene, which is there in cave number 26. And above the Mahaparinirvana scene, you have these people who are like mourning the demise of the Buddha. And we have these little preserved things. And coloring and painting, I brought one sample which can show to you the brush strokes and the colors. So you will be able to see, like today, if you are a painter today, how do you do it? Of course, much of the color it has discolored to some extent. Cleaning has always been done. There is a history of restoration and conservation. Initially, the Nizam of Hyderabad, they brought the Italian restorers, famous restorers, best restorers. But at that point of time, people believed that if you want to preserve the painting, apply varnish. And that is what they used to do even in Europe. So, but at that point of time, they did not know that after 50 years or after 70 years or after 100 years, a varnish becomes pale and also develops cracks in the surfaces, and various kind of temperature and humidity conditions, they impact the painting surfaces. And so varnish was taken out with great difficulty. But when you do these kind of things, what happens that to some extent you also damage the painting. So but now that is why the scientists are very careful today, and they follow today the process called reversal. It has to be reversibility. Whatever you do has to be reversibility. So these kind of things today do, and I'm not the expert in that area. I will not speak much. But if you can ignore that discoloration, then you will be able to notice that how this flower was made, how this line was made with black color, And look at this. This is geometrical shape, and these they appear like cubical shape or some kind of bricks, but no, they are actually representation of mountains. For some reason, Ajanta painters, they depicted mountains like this only. You know, there has been much speculation why it was done so, and but I still do not know why did they do it. But mountains are always depicted like this only, for some reason. And here you will be able to see the how the artist, you know, approach the subject. This particular slide is courtesy of my dear friend and respected scholar, Manager Singh. Right now, he is Director General of NRLC Lucknow, and this is like he and I, we co-authored an article published in Springer's Encyclopedia of Science and Technology, uh, and the Science and Technology and Medicine in Non-Western Cultures. So it's a joint article, and from that article, I have brought this photograph. So this is his scientific analysis, and he has published his scientific analysis. He was, you know, in the science branch of Archaeological Survey of India, and he has done chemical analysis, scientific analysis of Ajanta pigments. So this is from him, and his name is mentioned here. Uh, so I will just read out to you, because I'm not a scientist. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not the best person to speak about. So for white, they used kaolin, and for to produce the white color, they use also calcium carbonate and shell white. And these things are found, every kaolin is found everywhere. Calcium carbonate in dresses, architectural depictions and figures, shell white for lips, necklace, and decorations on women figures. Red color was obtained from red ochre, it's found throughout, and from red lake, and it's found in brighter red pigments all over. And in China bar rare, they are called rare, identified at one place only, very rarely used, but he has been able to still mention it. Yellow was obtained from yellow ochre. They used it, the artists used it for background and animals and races and figures. Orpiment on realgar, they used for decorations and tools and dresses and animals. And green color was obtained from green earth, and the artist used it for painting the leaves and dresses and background. And green was also obtained from orpiment with blue or organic black. Then blue was obtained from lapis lazuli, and it is not present, this blue is not present in the earlier group of caves, that is in the pre-Christian caves, that in the 1st century and 2nd century BC caves, blue color is not seen, because blue color was from lapis lazuli only in the in the in the uh, uh, in the 5th century AD, and you had probably lapis lazuli coming from Afghanistan area, and the artists were able to use it in the 5th century caves. And black color was obtained from lamp black, that is also found all around. So this is about the pigment process. In that article, Mr. Singh, Dr. Manager Singh has described in detail about further chemical analysis and the recipes about this, but we cannot go into extreme detail over here in this presentation. In this photograph, I'm going to show you what Professor Spink used to show to us. The easiest way to find how the process happened, how the artist worked in Ajanta. So if you are able to see with any clarity in this photograph, I will ask you to look at these 3 Buddha figures over here. They are Saptamanushi Buddha painted over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the 7th one is here. They're called Saptamanushi Buddha. Each Buddha sits under a different tree, and but I'm not going to go into iconography, because the purpose here is to show the how the artist painted, did the painting process. So please look at this 1, 2, 3 left, the three photographs on the left. Please also, and then compare it with these three photographs. You see, they look like black and white. They look like black and white figures, and these are colored figures. And this is very very well colored, and a little bit of color has, it's like discolored from here, and then more has discolored from there, and these three have what suffers. Also look at the treatment. So what happened? Why these three have discolored and this has not discolored as much? And then also look at uh, the tree over here. This is like a people tree, and this is another tree, different tree. Look at this. This tree have been preserved, but these three trees have been lost, greatly lost or damaged. Then I will ask you to focus over here. Look at this foliage, the treatment of this foliage. Then look at the treatment of this foliage here. This is a very different kind of treatment, and this is a different kind of treatment. Then I will ask you to look at the things here. Look at 1, 2, 3. These three panels with three loving couples. Then three loving couples over here. They also have better color, but has been a little discolored. I will also ask you to look at this. Look at the treatment of the floral decoration over here, and then the floral decoration over here. You see, it probably tells us that one guild was working over here and another guild was working over here. Two different group of artists were working simultaneously on this doorway. This is the upper part of the doorway of cave 17. And this is further confirmed by the style and the pigment. The process of pigment manufacturing, the recipe of pigment manufacturing was of better kind in this case, and different kind of pigment manufacturing was done by this particular guild, so that it has oxidized or discolored in the course of time. And this particular treatment will confirm to you that this entire panel was not done by the same artist, was not done by the same group of artists. So we know that simultaneously the work was divided of the same subject of Saptamanushya Buddha and Mithun couples, but the work was divided in two groups, and both were working simultaneously. They worked completed also simultaneously. So this is a little about, my purpose was to show to you how different guilds work, how different styles and workmanship can be identified. You can do this exercise for the whole of Ajanta. These are end number of paintings, and you can do your exercise yourself. Two more examples I have here. This is from cave number 1, and that is from cave number 2. This is a panel depicting the story of King Prabhasa. Look at the workmanship here and the style here, the color, the treatment, the physiognomy, the volume, the light and shade, anatomy, etc. And look at the work here. This is a theme called Bhagavad Prasuti. That is the story of the birth of the Buddha. So this is the Bodhisattva before his birth. So he's still sitting right now in the heaven and deciding, he's letting the other gods know that now he has decided to be reborn as Siddhartha. So that is the story. Let us keep the story apart and let us focus on the treatment of this subject. Even this has discolored. Even this is like oxidized a little bit. And look at the style, look at the human figure and the treatment, look at this and look at the figure here. This is more linear, this is more painterly, you know. So you can yourself find the distinctions, that these are obviously done by, in two caves you have two different guilds and artists working. Now I will take you to a subject which is not, which has not received the due attention, but how the paintings were programmed. So I will first talk to you about how the paintings were programmed in the porches, then in the halls, and how the ceilings were planned, different elements were programmed, how the inner shrines were programmed, and how the paintings were programmed on the pillars. All this is very detailed, and Professor Monica Zinn has done a great deal of research on this, and what I'm going to share with you is based on her research to a large extent. I'm showing to you a subject called the Bodhisattva King in a Mountainous Landscape. This is a new nomenclature given by her, Professor Monica Zinn. I'm showing to you something, you know, this is cave number 17. So when you enter the edifice, when you enter that building, then you see the veranda or the porch, and when you go past the pillars and colonnade, then you see the main entrance to the hall. And so this is the main door, and that Saptamanushi Buddha which I was talking to you about is right here, over here. And you know, on the left of this door and on the right of this door, unfortunately the lower, most of the lower part here on this side and most of the lower part on that side is gone. But whatever that has been preserved over here and whatever that has been preserved over here, I'm not going to show you the detail, but if you want to go deeper into it, you can go and see from Google walkthrough and other published literature. They are photographs. You can see that a subject called Bodhisattva King in a Mountainous Landscape. One Bodhisattva figure was painted here, another Bodhisattva figure was painted here. And this Bodhisattva, the setting was like in the mountain. Bodhisattva is the king. He's the king of the mountains. He's there in the jungles. And all the species, all the beings in the jungles, they will be seen here, you know. So this was the theme here. You have to simply imagine that it was painted over here. And because, you know, this is the porch area and it was open to the natural calamities and tourists and visitors, and they kind of destroyed the paintings. Unfortunately, these are all gone. And so once you go inside, and because I do not have the right photo from cave number 17, so I'm showing you the photo of cave number 1. It was a basic same kind of programming in most of the caves. So Bodhisattva King in a mountainous landscape, flanking the doorway of the porch, then enter the hall, then flanking here you have same theme, Bodhisattva King in a mountainous landscape here, and then here Bodhisattva here, Bodhisattva here, on the axis on the both the sides, so-called Padmapani and so-called Vajrapani. You know, I do not know whether you can see in that photograph. And once you go inside, then this is the shrine doorway. So on the left side of that shrine and on the right side of the shrine, you were likely to find this, but not always, but to find it, because Bodhisattva welcomes you, because when you are going to meet the Buddha and to pay your reverence to the Buddha, to worship the Buddha, you are welcomed as doorkeepers, as like a Dwarpala, you are welcomed by the Bodhisattvas. And who are the Bodhisattvas? Bodhisattva, according to the Mahayana tradition or according to the later traditions, even Mula Sarvastivadin traditions, Bodhisattva is anybody like you and I. You know, well, Gautam Buddha, the Sakyamuni, Siddhartha, in his previous birth was Bodhisattva. And so in many previous births, he follows the paramitas and even gives up his life. He did heroic deeds, and then he's finally reborn. In the last birth, he is reborn in Siddhartha, and then he takes renunciation and becomes enlightenment, and then he is never born again. So, so Gautama Buddha, the Shakyamuni, was bodhisattva in his previous lives. So Mahayana tradition and even Mula Sarvastivadi tradition gives that right to you and to I also, because we have also undergone many previous births, and then in each previous birth, according to the Mahayana tradition and this tradition, we have also performed all those great deeds, all those paramitas, so that now we are born as humans and we are fit to be enlightened, provided we are following those eightfold paths and all the vinayas and all these paramitas, on all the conducts, the monastic conducts and the principles which have been taught by the Buddha. And if we follow that, then you and I can also become the Buddha. This provision and facility is only available in the Mahayana Buddhism and in the Mula Sarvastivada Buddhism, and in later Pali tradition also to an extent, but not in the older Pali tradition, because in the older Pali tradition, Buddha is the Arhat, and the others are also Arhat, and there is no concept of bodhisattva in the earlier times. So it's a concept. One has to understand what the painter was trying to do, how this temple was designed. This temple was these bodhisattvas, why they are there as Dwarapalas. When you are entering into that shrine to pay your offerings and you, worship to Lord Buddha, why these bodhisattvas have been placed over there. It's a very careful planning, and it is there everywhere in all the caves. Wherever you go, this is the theme. But there are also variations. It's not that it is there everywhere. There are you will find some different treatment also in some caves. And I'm showing you here close-up photo of the previous slide. On the left side, I was showing you the Bodhisattva King. This is a famous painting. Everybody knows about this painting. So you have this Bodhisattva King in a mountainous landscape. This is Bodhisattva King, and various kind of iconography. We can talk 1 hour just about this painting. Who are these creatures? Who are those people? It's a fascinating subject. But because it is introduction and we are talking about how the painting program was designed in Ajanta caves, so we will not go into the detail. On the left side you have this, and on the right side this is again you have a Bodhisattva King. And so this was a template in most other caves. Here you have Bodhisattva King, and these two are taken for different purpose. Now once you cross the hall and go inside, then this space is called shrine antechamber. This space is called shrine antechamber. So once you go inside the shrine antechamber, then inside that you have the shrine. Inside that you have the shrine, in the inner shrine, the sanctum sanctorum. But before you go to the sanctum sanctorum, you have the gate, a different door of the sanctum sanctorum, not visible in this photo, but in the next photo I will show you. But on the shrine doorway, on the right side of the shrine doorway, not very clearly visible in this photo, but here again you have the Bodhisattva King, and on the left side also here again you have the Bodhisattva on this wall also. So the same thing was done even on the shrine antechamber, Bodhisattva King as Dwarapalas. And once you go inside the shrine, so you have the Buddha seated here. He is teaching in Dharma Chakra Pravartana Mudra, and there also Buddha is attended by Bodhisattvas. He is a Bodhisattva with fly whisk, and he is also Bodhisattva with fly whisk. And here you have the Gandharva. These are two Gandharva, they are semi-celestial beings. They are the class of Yaksha. Normally they play music. They make music because Buddha was very fond of music. Buddha was fond of three things: music, fragrance, sugandha, and cleanliness, that is brooming. Buddha, these three things were dear to Buddha. Fourth thing was not desirable. So Buddha was a very simplistic uh, 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 person, from what we are told by the ancient scriptures. So these Gandharvas, they are flying Gandharva in the sky, in the mount, in the clouds, and they are bringing here garland for the Buddha. Let's forget that detail, but I want to show you something over here, because as you can see, even this sculpture was painted. So everything was painted, you know, except the floor. Everything was meant to be painted, not only the walls, not only the ceiling, but also the sculptures. The color has gone from here, but colors are preserved over here, as you can see. But here is something very interesting. Look at the ceiling and look at that wall. We see no such evidence of painting. Look at that ceiling and look at this wall. We see no trace of plaster and no evidence of painting. But the painting is visible over here in that shrine antechamber, but not inside the shrine. Now, why is that so? If you are the planner, such a fabulous temple you are making, and with every detail, the sculpture is so beautifully done, every painting is so beautifully done, architecture is so beautifully done, why will you not? If you're a planner, such a planner, why will you not do this? In the end, this is another evidence that the work was abandoned. They could never get back to the ceiling to do any plastering or to do any painting. Professor Spink has written a lot, researched a lot. He has examined every inch of Ajanta and has produced a lot of documentary evidence which tells us a story. If you make an analysis of it, collect all those data preserved in the monument, then it tells a story. Same story in every cave. That suddenly, one fine day, there was a military scenario, and people were they had to just leave and go. Okay, so that was about painting in the shrine. Now, even the pillars were painted. So this figure is from cave number 17, and look at this, how the figures were painted. There are some motifs, different kind of motifs, and the auspicious motifs, auspicious symbols in Buddhism, and so everything was nicely painted. I will now take you to another part of the lecture on subject matter. And all the paintings of Ajanta can be categorized in two class. One is the narrative painting, another is the non-narrative painting. So these are two examples. The non-narrative painting is something what you see on the ceilings. Okay, they are like different kind of decorative patterns. There is no story over there. There is no legend over there. These are like stories and legends. What those stories and legends are, I'm going to tell you very soon. Narrative paintings. Most people know. Archaeology students of history, they all know what narrative paintings are. But what most people do not perhaps know, because Professor Shingloff's research has just come 2013. He has published his great magnum opus, 3 decades of research. His book is called Handbook of Ajanta Paintings. From that book, I have brought to you some data. He has done extensive research now, and a lot of identifications of the Ajanta paintings. What are the subject matter of those narratives, of those stories, and which are those Buddhist scriptures to which the Ajanta legends they most closely relate. Because in various canons, in various traditions, you have different versions, and sometimes the painting which is found in Ajanta, they do not always match with every version in every canon. So finally now after 2 centuries of research, we are now in 2020. We are very happy that we have now much more clarity on this than we had 3 decades ago. So Ajanta is like any other subject. It's an evolving subject, developing subject like physics and mathematics and economics and astrophysics and biochemistry, where knowledge is always growing. More scholars are always contributing each day. So I'm bringing to you this collective wisdom, and so the latest current research tells us that there are altogether there are 94, uh, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, altogether there are 94 depictions of Buddhist legends in Ajanta. 94 depictions are there, but stories are not 94. I think stories are only uh, 84. I think 84 stories are there. 84 stories, but some story has been painted 2 times in different caves, and therefore same story has been painted 2 times in different caves. Some story has been painted 3 times in different caves. Some stories were more favorite, and they were painted. For example, Prabhasa has been painted 2 times. So right now, this table which I have brought you, data which I have brought you here, is about the depictions in Ajanta. Total 94 depictions we have of stories. Out of those 94 depictions, 27 are from Aresura's Jatak Malas. Aresura Jatak Mala. It is a work of literature written by Aresura. And so they're not from Pali Jataka. This one is not. These 27 are not. And 24 are from Mool Sarvastivadi Vinaya. 10 are from the Pali Jatak. And Pali Jatak, as you know, has come down to us in 2 forms. One is the oldest Pali Jataka, which is in verse, and later on, we have the prose form also, but that is the later Pali texts. So the older Pali texts, 10 are from the older Pali texts, 6 are from the Vyavadana, and another 6 are from Kalpana Mandi Tika by Kumarlat. 2 are from the Jatak Mala by Haribhat. 2 are from from a manuscript from Kizil. In Kizil, many manuscripts were found in Kizil by the German expedition, by the German explorers, and they had brought to Germany many manuscripts from Kizil caves in Central Asia. So, in one of those manuscripts, a story is found on Sut Som. That story matches most closely with 2 of the depictions in Ajanta, and one is from the Saundarnand of Ashwagota Saundarnand, one from Chatus Parishat Sutra, which is a part of the Dirghagama of the Sarvastivadins, and one from Dignikaya, one from a work which is now preserved only in the Chinese translations. The original Sanskrit has been lost. Another one is also now preserved from an ancient scripture in Sanskrit, which has been lost, but its ancient translation done in the Chinese has been preserved, and also in the Tibetan has been preserved. I do not know how to pronounce it, so I will not make an attempt to pronounce these Chinese and Tibetan pronunciations. Name of these texts, scriptures. One is from Chemendra's Bodhisattvavadan Kalpalata, and one from Lalit Vistar, one from Mahaparinirvana Sutra, one from Mahasamaj Sutra, and one from Pali Jataka in prose. That means it is of the later time, later recension, and one from Palijataka, verse, as well as prose. So this is the data which I have collected, and such data has not so far been published in the Ajanta literature so far. It is from Professor Shinglov's Ajanta handbook, and which is an ocean in itself. You are most you should definitely go uh, and learn further about this subject from the handbook of Professor Shimlov. Now, that was actually the aggregate data, but I have something over here. All right. All right. I'll show you later on.
Now it is now displayed. They are now displayed, Rajesh.
Oh, can I see that?
Yeah, yeah. Worship
Oh,
and abandonment of amid. That's well. It is there. You
no,
want to?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to go back to a file. Uh, well, I'll 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 get another file.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Please.
yeah, I have a file over here.
You have to search the file in the main, this file, and then share it screen, and then I will
Yeah,
allow it.
yeah, I don't know where is that file.
Follow the same process. You go to the share screen. First, you
Oh
select the file in your laptop.
no, that cannot be seen now. I have not kept that file. One second. I'll just get this file.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can you see the file now?
Yeah.
It is an Excel file.
Yeah, it is done.
Yeah. So I have made a collection. I have made a table here with each single jataka. Each single painting. For example, in cave number 17, you have Hamsa, and a story of Hamsa, which is taken from Arisura's Jatak Mala. And for example, in cave number 16, you have the Nanda story, which is taken from Ashwaghota's Sondar Nanda. And like that, like you have a Prabhasa, three depictions of Prabhasa. One is cave 1, another in cave number 2, and a third one in cave 17. And they are all from Kumar Lat's Kalpana Mandi Tika. And you have Mara theme in cave number 1, it is painted. In cave number 6, it is painted. And that is from Mula Sarvasti Vada Vinaya. And like that, I just wanted to make a demonstration that the data which I'm sharing with you is a new knowledge, because uh, uh, this whole new for us Indians who are teaching in our classrooms, and the older published literature, they do not give us the correct insight, because knowledge has now advanced. We are now in a better position to tell which kind of Buddhist scriptures are the nearest to the Ajanta paintings. So you are welcome to do further research on this and benefit from this current knowledge. And like that. So Ajanta is now very different from what we used to think 2 decades ago. That was the only thing I wanted to convey by this file. And now I will go back to another same file. Yeah, let us come back here now. Uh, I will, because there are 84 depictions. As I said, there are 84 depictions, and it will not be possible for us uh, in any way to learn about all the stories here in this brief time. And I just in 5 minutes, I would like to tell you at least one or two stories as to what the narrative paintings are. And so I have a different file to tell you this story. This is my book, which was published 2 years ago, and this is a this is I did a photographic compendium of Ajanta cave number 1. So this one has all the stories in brief, and it has good photographs of every single narrative, and each narrative, each story, Ajanta, Ajanta painter painted stories in different episodes. Like in today's TV series, you watch a TV series or serial, and you have seasons and then different episodes. And in childhood, we used to read comic books, comic, like Phantom and He-Man and etc. So the painter in those pre-television era, uh, painter used to tell the story in different episodes, in different scenes. So that is the light narrative, like that, through pictures you tell a story. So what Ajanta painters did, some of the painters, they told the story in 3 episodes or 3 scenes. Others narrated the story in 10 scenes. Some stories are there in as many as 32 scenes. So it has been a challenging for scholars to identify which are those scenes and what figures or which characters are visible in those scenes and what is happening in those scenes. The task was very difficult for many reasons. The first reason was because of the state of preservation. The paintings have been so badly damaged. And so this is what one reason. Another reason was also that the nearest version which is now available to us, which I was telling you about, was not available to us about 2 decades ago. We had only we had greater access to the Pali canon and the Pali literature, but as I told you, there are very few depictions from the Pali literature, and a larger majority, about 50, about 60 to 70% are from non-Pali literature, and so our previous studies are no longer valid. So that is why there was a need to freshly document these paintings and describe the scenes, what we see, what is the story. For example, I will tell you the story of this Mahasudarshan. Just I'm taking one, because there are 84 stories. Really, each story deserves 1 hour. Believe me, each story, uh, a good study of Ajanta will require each study, because each legend, Buddhist legend, is found in various versions. So you must read those different versions and then look at the painting and then compare yourself based on scientific observation which version is the closest. So when we did that exercise, the so-called Persian embassy, this is what has been written in the published literature, Persian embassy scene. But thanks to Professor Stringloff, he identified that no, it is not Persian embassy. It is the story of one called Mahasudarshan. So here is, I'm telling you what's happening here. King Mahasudarshan is seated here on the throne in his pavilion, in his palace. And lots of people are coming here with expensive gifts. And some of them, I don't know whether you are able to see in this picture, because it is so bad and the light was very bad. I did not have a very high quality of camera, and I did a lot of photo editing. It is so dark, nobody has been able to take good quality photographs so far. I have not seen. I have not seen excellent photo published of this particular narrative anywhere. And you see, it's so badly damaged also. So you please forgive me for the quality of illustration. But if you can see anything from this, these are some figures, some kings with wearing crowns, and you see these are coming with in trays. This guy is holding a tray. He has a topi, which is like a Iranian or Afghani kind of topi. He's definitely not like a typical Indic fellow. He has a beard, and he also has some kind of a dress over here. He's coming with a tray full of precious gems and jewels. And here also another man is seated here. He's wearing rich ornaments, and he has a crown over here, and he's keeping something on the floor. And this man is also seated here on the floor, and in front of him, what you see here is looks to be a very strange kind of vessel. And if you see clearly, this is a vessel full of diamonds and rubies and emeralds and precious items. And all these people are coming here, and this guy is also coming here with a tray, and with expensive precious silken made and different kind of, and all these people are coming here with, some guy is coming here with all these kind of expensive gifts. So what's happening here is a scene of an extremely affluent and prosperous and happy people in the land of King Mahasudarshan. You know, King Mahasudarshan was living in the ancient city of Kushavati, and people, nobody was poor in his land. So one day they all said, "Look, our house is full, and we have no place to keep all this wealth. So let's go and donate all this money, all this wealth to the king." So when they come here to the king, so king is actually not willing to take it, because he is showing a hand sign. This is the king. Unfortunately, somebody has tried to peel off his face because it was so beautiful. So all these vandals who visited Ajanta, they tried to take a piece of it, you know, and carry it for them, maybe for their wife or husband, as a souvenir. And so they tried to destroy the most beautiful part of thing. So this is the king, and king has a halo over here. So you can say, I mean, he is not an ordinary king, because he was none other than the Gautam Buddha in previous birth. And this is his right hand, and this is his finger, and he is showing like, look, I don't want all this, because my treasures are full. My treasures are full, my treasury is full, and there is no place to keep, and we don't need, the palace does not need all this wealth, so please take it away. So these people are not interested. They just leaving all the gifts on the floor, and some of them are already departing back, which is not preserved. This guy is going back now. His face is he's looking on that side. He's already going back. He left these things over here on the floor. So ultimately, you know what happens. I'll show you the next slide. Yeah, this is a better slide. In this, the king's finger is he's showing by a hand sign that I don't need all these riches. And look at this garment. It is kept on the floor. Some precious hand woven, like, you know, like you have Tanjore silk or some Banarsi silk, and thousands of very most precious kind of garments still available in the market. So like that, they had brought gifts, and king is really not interested. So, you know, this is another detail of these people, and this is a further detail of the same people. So what king ultimately does is that when those people left, so the king decides now what to do with all this wealth. So he called all his courtiers, all his advisors, that look, what to do with this wealth. So then the advisors said, we can make or the king expressed his wish that let us make a temple of all religions. And then temple of all religions was made. Unfortunately, that part is gone, damaged, so it is not visible. But then king retired. When the king retired, he went to the temple every day. He would sit in the temple and feed the. There was a bhojan shala where free food was given, distributed to the people. So this is a simple story, and this story is of the Lord Buddha. He was none other than Lord Buddha in the previous birth. So this was just one story which I narrated to you. Then there is a story of Shibi Kapota, Raja Shibi. This most of you must be familiar with this story. Here you have Indra and Vishwakarma. They are planning to test King Shibi, who was famous for his charity. And so they come in the form of a pigeon, and they come in the form of a pigeon. In this particular, this is King Shibi, and in his lap you have a pigeon in his lap, and people have tried to peel off peel off this part of the painting, so it is not very clearly visible over here. But this was a pigeon, and it falls in the lap. And after that, a garuda, that is an eagle, comes and want to eat that pigeon. And so the king said, look, you have nothing to fear in my kingdom. So he said, please save my life. I said, okay, your life will be saved, don't worry. So the eagle comes. He said, look, pigeon is my food. If you're going to save the life of the pigeon, what will happen to my life? So king said, okay, don't worry, I will give you flesh from my own body, and I because in my kingdom nobody could be harmed. So he said, well, I want it in equal measure. So have a balance. So a balance was brought. So when king started cutting his different body parts, but because this was none other than Indra and Vishwakarma, and in the form of pigeon and eagle. So the more flesh he will put in the balance, the heavier the other side will become. So ultimately, King Shibi himself, he is climbing onto the balance that you can eat my whole body. And these ladies, look at all these ladies, they are crying in fear, protesting, what are you doing? Are you not responsible? Are you not accountable for the citizens? You know, so this is the lamentation, and she's beating her chest. This woman, you can see, and somebody is really, they're crying. They cannot witness this horrific scene. And ultimately, when the king himself climbed onto the balance, then they came in their real form and said, Lord King Shibi, you are the greatest one. No one greater charitable than you we have seen so far. And it was simply a test, and there was a shower of flower from the sky. So this is a story which is also there in later on. It was repeated in the Mahabharata. These two people are seen here are Brahmakaikas. You know, they are like they are the gods of the Brahma heaven. They look like rishis and sages. They have appeared here to see this miracle event of this king. And so I don't have to tell you, and this is also gods, they have also come to witness this miraculous event. So I don't have to now tell you that this King Shibi was none other than Shakyamuni Gautama, the Buddha himself, in the previous birth, because he does great. He was he was performing one of those paramitas in each previous birth. I will now stop. 84 stories, it is not possible. Just two stories I wanted to depict to you. I wanted to explain to you that such kind of stories are depicted by the Ajanta painters. And after that, I go back to the slide to complete in 5 minutes some remaining part of the slide.
Yes, Rajesh.
Yeah, I will complete. There are only 3-4 slides are there. In 5 minutes, I will complete. Uh,
Please do.
you know, this is a story that also relates to painting. As I said, this is cave number 17 inside the shrine. If you go inside the shrine, and you see here, this is the same cave number 17, Shrine Buddha, and this is a donor figure. he has been carved here. He's a worshipper. And you see the deer park. This is the Dharma Chakra over here. That is the Bodhisattva. But look at that wall if you are able to see something. The painting is preserved on this body, and here everywhere traces of paintings are there. This is painted. But can you see any traces of painting on this wall? The answer is no, because plaster is visible and no painting, no trace of painting over here. And if you look at the ceiling, that is the photo of the ceiling. I want to show you something interesting here. I have no idea if you are able to see, but I'm trying to make it bigger. You see, there are 1, 2, 3. What you see here on the ceiling are iron hooks. Thanks to Professor Spink, who was able to document all this. The 3 iron hooks. So, and this is the Gandharva in the ceiling. This is the Buddha, and this is the entrance gate. That is the socket in the last lecture I told you about for hanging the door inside the shrine. So you know that the door was hung from inside. And if you look at the ceiling, then in the ceiling you are able to see these 3 iron. This is iron. um, you are not permitted to go inside the shrine. Now, Archaeological Survey of India had made restrictions, and I was, as a researcher, I was able to obtain some special permission in order to take this photograph, because this is of high research value. And so these three are iron hooks belonging to 5th century AD. So those 3 iron hooks are there for a specific purpose. They were there for hanging the bells. So even today, if you go to the temple, you see the temple bells, and our garlands or temple bells. That is the purpose. So that is an evidence that painting was worship was happening, because the cave was completed. In cave number 17, everything is complete, everything looks complete, even this is complete with painting, but everything is really not complete, because the wall was never painted inside the shrine. The question is, why will you not paint the wall? And you were doing the worship because iron hook is there, but there is no trace of painting on the ceiling. Why the ceiling was never painted? Look at this part. This is also a wall. Why this wall was not painted? Not a trace of plaster or painting is available here. That means very little work of painting was remaining, which could never be completed. They had to abandon and go. All they were able to do is to do some worship, that is to consecrate, that is to dedicate the caves. Ultimately it was the work of a punya, of a religious merit. And you get religious merit only when you do prana pratishtha. That is, when, if you created a great temple and the worship has never taken place, the prana pratishtha has never taken place, you are not going to get any punya. So, and a god can only be worshipped when prana pratishtha has been done. Certain kind of religious practice, certain kind of rituals, cultic practices are involved into this. This is equal in Buddhism and Jainism and also in Hinduism. So I'm showing to you some proof that something terribly wrong had happened. Let's go to the next slide. This is from another cave. That was cave 17. Now we are in cave number 1. Same story here, inside the shrine. Baffling story. Look at this. Look at this ceiling. Look at this. The shrine Buddha has been painted. This all been painted. But look at the ceiling. Look at that wall. No trace of plaster. No trace of painting. All right. And I have another photo here. I have many photos. I'm just selecting 1 or 2 examples to illustrate the point. Look at the ceiling here. No plaster, no painting, not even those iron hooks. Not even those iron hooks. That means in cave number 17, which I showed to you earlier, at least some worship for a few days or a few weeks or a few months definitely happened. In cave number 1 shrine, no such evidence is visible. Worship never happened. Professor Spink has shown to us with convincing detail and mountain of evidence that a cave number 1, which was so close to completion, you can say 99% it was completed, but the last 1% they were not able to complete because of the same military condition. Entire India was engulfed by a military situation. It was a cauldron of fire. People had to leave the place and go. Now let's come to a different slide. This is cave number 4. Now we are in cave number 4, and that is the shrine Buddha inside cave number 4. Again, you can see that Buddha looks to have been, it looks like the sculpture has been completed. He's in Dharmachakra Pravartana Mudra. He's in teaching posture. You have Dharmachakra below and 2 deers. That means it is a scene of the deer park. And I don't have to tell you what happened in deer park. It was the day of Ashad Purnima. On that Ashad Purnima, in Sarnath, near Isipatan or Rishipatan, Buddha, after his enlightenment, exactly 2 months after his enlightenment, he found those 5 ascetics who had renounced him earlier, and he gave the first sermon. Those 5 ascetics, called the Panchavargiya Bhikshus, they became the Buddha's first disciple. On that very day, when he gave the first sermon in Sarnath, the Buddhist religion was founded. And it was celebrated as a festival, I argue, in ancient India. And this is a theme which became a hallmark in all the shrine Buddhas in Ajanta. And therefore, I suspect that Ashad Purnima was a festival celebrated in ancient India like Diwali and Christmas. And but let's not get into that. That is another part of the story. I want to show you something else, because you can see the traces of painting are visible on the body of the Buddha. So it was painted, and even there is an inscription over here which says that one Mathur has donated this edifice, this cave number 4 entire building was his donation. He had signed the check, if I may say so. But if you look at the right wall, what do you see? You do not see any traces of plaster. You do not see any trace of painting. Even this edifice was not painted. It was never completed. Just a few months or maybe 1 year was required to complete the whole thing. They could not do that. And there is also another something very interesting. Look at this 1, 2, 3, 4, these Buddha sculptures. They do not have any program. One is the upper part of this panel is here, the upper part of this sculpture is here, the upper part of that sculpture is here, the lower part of this sculpture is here, the lower part of that sculpture is here, lower part of this sculpture is here. The gap between these two sculptures is so much, and the gap between these two sculptures is so much, and this one is right here. It does not make sense. It does not look to be a plan. It does not look like one guy has done it. Does not look like someone who programmed things so nicely and beautifully, so proportionally, the entire edifice with such kind of beautiful planning. It's not the work of that guy. This is, and Professor Spink has shown to us convincingly, that when the caves were abandoned, when nobody was around, then some people like you and me, we were passing around in that place 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later. Professor Spink says within 2 years of abandonment, because it is on the trade route and people were always coming and going. So when they see these fabulous temples painted here, and nobody's seen around, and they also wanted to earn their own religious merit and punya, and they did not have 1 crore or $1 lakh of check, because some very powerful people were involved in the making of Ajanta, and there are donations. They are very, very powerful people in the 5th century AD who created these great buildings. But these were not so powerful people. They were like you and me with just 100 rupees in the pocket. But we also wanted to make our donations, and nobody was here. But a few sculptors or painters were still around, and they said, "Look, look, look! We can make a, if you even today, if you donate, it was if you donate a figure of the Buddha, if you carve a foot of Buddha, if you donate, you give a Bible, if if you Bible, gift a Bible to somebody, or gift a Jain text to somebody, or Buddhist case, or a Gita to somebody, it is always considered to be a punya, a good deed. And therefore, if you gift an image, it is also a great religious merit, punya. So, as Professor Spink would say, he used to tell us that, the sculptors made this Buddha for X, and this was made for Y, and this was made for another guy, and this was made for another person. So 4 different persons with 100 rupees in their pocket, they also had the chance to earn punya after the caves were abandoned. If you do reasoning, if you read reasoning, you will understand. If it was plastered, if it was well painted, nobody will destroy that, especially if you are a Buddhist, if you are a believer in those times. You will not do such heresy and destroy and commit vandalism in those times to donate your own these horrible looking imagery. And so the presence of this imagery is also an evidence that the painting was never done over here. And such imagery are never found in Ajanta or any other place where paintings are already there. So there's so much to see and so much to learn just by seeing and looking. Further proof of abandonment is available from another cave, and this cave is cave number upper 6. Look at these pillars and look at this floor. They could not complete this floor. This floor was not done. Look at that ceiling. If you are able to see the ceiling, not a trace of plaster, not a trace of painting is visible on that ceiling. So many things to see. They all tell you only one story, that the caves were abandoned in their times. And I have more photographs here. Cave number 24, the ceiling was completed and they were working on the floor and it was not done. And while masons were taking out the rock, carving the rock here and removing it from the interior to the exterior, sculptors were already working in finishing the pillar over here. Of course, this task was also never done. And I will show you something even more interesting. Look at this cave number 2, which was worshipped because of many kind of evidence. It was largely completed, not completely completed, largely completed, and but I'll show you something very interesting which Professor Spink showed to us, and he has written all of this in his book. And I want to show you something over here. Okay, this is I'm very sorry about the quality of the photograph, but this is the famous scene of the Buddha's birth in cave number 2, left wall. This is a very bad photo for some reason, but this narrative tells us the story of the Buddha's birth. Here the Buddha is born. This is Indra, that is Brahma. They have taken the Buddha, the Siddhartha in their lap. Siddhartha walks here 7 foot, and here this is his mother Maya, and here this is the scene 1, and that is scene 1, scene 2, and other scenes from the story. But the purpose here, if I tell you the story, it may take a little while longer, but I want to show you something else. Look at this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 Buddhas. And here, look at this. This is one guy here, seated here. He's a worshipper. He's seated here with a lotus flower in his hand, which he's offering to these Buddhas. Now, what story is there? This is no story actually. That is a story, but this is no story. All right. And there is nothing over here. If you see clear photo, in fact, when you go to Ajanta, you should see it from your naked eyes. Should go there with torch. Nothing is here. This is plaster. This is platter. Not a trace of painting will be visible here. What I'm trying to say, what Professor Spink was able to tell us and show to us convincingly, was that they were doing the story. Everything was programmed in the cave. All the walls were meant to be having different stories, and this was painted. After that, the work stopped. When the caves were abandoned, I told you some people came and donated individual sculptures, which are called intrusive because they intrude upon the original program. They violate the original planning and programming of the painting in the caves. And therefore, when nobody was around, people donated it. So it was also done in the realm of painting. Such intrusions were also made in the realm of painting. So what you've seen here is the same act in the painted format. Because these subjects are alien to us or maybe strange to us. So we have to study it. But if you were a Buddhist in 5th century AD coming to these caves, these subjects were not difficult for you. You would immediately recognize that this is the story of the birth of the Buddha. And then you will be surprised that this whole area was left vacant. And so you thought that, well, I also want to do something over here. And all that you did was to make 4 Buddhas over here. Maybe you came in the group of 4. You had 4 friends, 3 other friends, and 1 Buddha for each. And, maybe you were a single guy because 4 worshippers are not here. So these are your self-portraits. You are worshipping the Buddha, and this is nothing different from taking selfies that we do today. We go to Taj Mahal, and with Taj Mahal in the background, we want to take your photo, you want to mark your presence. So these are worshippers are none other than the donors of these 4 images. So the artist here, so the donor of this was done under a different program, but this was done in a very different situation and circumstances. And here also, like you see, this is really not a story. It is a story, but they are like Mahapratihariya, when the Buddha multiplicated himself, something called miracle of Shravasti. Sometime that is another story. So I just try to show to you that painting also tells a different kind of story of what happened. There are narrative stories, but this is a non-narrative story. It does not have any story to tell you. Simply there are 4 images for worshipping, and this guy is worshipping. And now the last slide I have, I will wind off. It's really I've taken a lot of time. I will now wind off. This is my new theory. This is my new idea to say as to what happened. I did a massive analysis of what happened. I studied the situation in those times, and I found that our present knowledge has huge gaps and gulfs in spite of all the progress that we have made. And so we do not know about the history of the people, but we at least know a little bit about the history of those kings, thanks to different kind of archaeological and data in inscriptions and coins and other historical sources that we have. But I found a pattern. I did some studies and I found something very interesting, that this Alchon Hul Kingila, the Huna, they were Huna people, early, I call them early Huna, before Mihirkul, before Tormana. He came here because Tormana came in 492 AD, and we all know that he established his kingdom and he ruled up to central India, and he came in 492 AD. But Ajanta is right here, and all the rock cut monuments are right here. This is a time scale from 440 to 495. And I'm here, Ajanta, and every other rock cut monument is right here in 460, and it ends in 477. So according to Professor Spink and according to every other scholar who has researched on this area and has gone into the detail of all the evidence, they have no doubt that this is a credible dating for the 5th century caves. So this is where Ajanta is, and this is the Trekutaka genealogy. This is the eastern Vakatakas. These are western Vakataka. This is the Rishika king ruling from Khandesh. This is the Guptas, and these are the Parivrajakas. And this is about Subandhu and his predecessors. And these are the Gupta confederate called Nagabhatta ruling from Valkha, and these are early Olikarak ruling from Dashpur, and the later Olikaraka ruling from Mandsaur. If you study their history and chronology, you will find a startling pattern that the ruling of the king, I have given the name of each king over here with their ruling dates, and I can this itself will take about 1 hour, so I will not go into the detail. Maybe I've just published this book, has gone for publication. Munshi Ram Manohar Lal is publishing it. This book is called Early Hunnic Invasions and Abandonment of Buddhist Caves, in which I have taken time to explain this new history, which says basically that the early Hun called one guy was named called Kingila. He raided Gandhar, Kashmir, Punjab, Malwa, Central India, Khandesh, Lat, and Saurashtra and Sindh. He is the one who destroyed the culture of those times. And right from Afghanistan, from Bactria and Gandhar area up to the Deccan, he is responsible for the abandonment of all the Buddhist caves, not only Ajanta, but I have in my list about 14 rock cut sites that were developing at the time. He created a great mayhem, and it was only after 478 AD when he was defeated by Buddhagupta, according to my study and research. That he became, and they became, because he was not alone. There were many Alchon war lords who used to attack from different fronts, and therefore it was not possible for an Indian kingdom to fight a multi-front war. Okay, so all the Indian kings had created a consortium, a kind of coalition to fight against the multi-front war strategy of those Alchon Huns. So, and our written history has some gap about it, and I have tried to propose, at least if I cannot prove it, but at least I have made a proposal that all the data, if you relate together, then it try to tell you a story that the Kingila, that guy who was there, his name is available to us from hundreds of coins that we have. And this is a new research in the last 2 decades. A lot of new finds have come from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other regions, and Kashmir areas and Gandhar areas. And we in India have a very habit of not studying the archaeology and history of other modern nations, and therefore the current research we are not very much familiar with. So if you join the dots, it tells you a story that the military condition which Professor Spink rightly detected was not Rishika Ashmaka war. It was the attack of Alchon Huns, and due to these attacks, all these Gandharan people, monastics, they fled from there. And because China was also under attack, Roman Empire was under attack, Iran was, the Sasanian Empire was under attack, they had nowhere to go. So they came towards this, because at that point of time, Skandagupta was ruling here and Harisena was ruling here, these 2 great kings, and Dharasana was ruling in Konkan. India was very peaceful. So they came here, and they came with wealth because Buddhism was being supported by the mercantile community, the merchant community. They came with their treasures and assets and whatever belongings they had, and they tried to make temple here. And that is why the Buddhism of Ajanta was also drastically changed when they came here. All kind of evidence is there that Mula Sarvastivad, they came here with Mula Sarvastivad, and the earlier Pali canon, Pali Buddhism, was replaced by the new form of Buddhism, which also was Shravakyana, but it was a new form of Buddhism. Architecture was changed, iconography was changed, scripture was changed, philosophy was changed, legend was changed, even materials and technique and pigments was changed, because I talked to you about lapis lazuli. They brought here lapis lazuli from Gandhar region. It has been proven by scientific analysis. So much happened. And with this, I end my lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Rajesh Singh. It was a wonderful presentation. In very little, you have taken roughly about 1 hour 48 minutes
I'm
time.
very sorry. I'm very
And I
sorry.
can tell you
Very sorry.
with full conformity, and I can tell you with full conformity and commitment that you have not wasted a single second of it. Every second of the time has been carefully managed, and it was, pool of information, pool of knowledge, pool of academic debate and discussions, and finding references all has been presented in your the presentation, wonderful presentations. People are very happy. I invited two professors from Delhi University, Professor Rajiv Verma and Professor Jaya Verma. They are historians, they are
Hmm.
seasoned historians, and they have seen watched your program right from the beginning to the end, and they say that it was a wonderful presentation. They themselves visited Ajanta for 3 4 times, but the way you have narrated, they are very happy with you. We have Ashok Pujari. He says excellent explanation, and he's a photographer. I say I will send you some paintings to get more details. He's you know he offers you this thing, and we have National Institute of the Fashion Technology, Mumbai's artist uh, Dhawan Sahab, Harish Dhawan. He says, I understand it is all organic colors. Is true or not?
No, they're all mineral colors. Organic color cannot survive for such a long time. They knew
Oh,
it so very well, and that is why they use mineral colors. And I
oh.
told you the color composition in that particular table which I had. If you want, I can send you my PPT. Whoever wants it.
Your senior Santanu Mitra, he says, good one. We have journalist Geeta Sri. She says, thanks. And we have again Dr. Anjali Kumar Jha, historian. He says Ajanta symbolizes beauty. Yes, I think he is true. We have Om Prakash Thakur, Om Prakash, he is a historian. He has almost finished his PhD. He is a keeper of, Lal Killa Museum. And he says, thank you, sir. I, I'm sorry, I just wanted to quote Dr. Rajiv Verma. He is a principal of Satyavati College. He said, I have been to Ajanta, beautiful place. Here we can witness the transition from symbol, that is stupa worship, to worship of Buddha in human form. Beautiful fresco paintings which need more efforts for preservation and conservation from cave 1 to cave 20. It is great art journey. He is appreciative about you and all those things. So uh, this way, people have we have our old friend Har Prasad Ramchandra Sahab, great Rajesh ji. Harish Dhawan is saying, I'm watching Bhavna Solanki, probably you're a student and colleagues. He says, great, sir, to find you there. So we have Kiran Prabha Kashyap Swagat. Dr. Rajiv Verma welcomes you. Uh, Dr. Anjali Jha says again, welcome Dr. Rajesh. We have Namu Narayan Mishra. He also talks on art. He says, welcome. Uh, we have Rajwant Raj. आप दोनों को सादर नमस्कार ऐसा कह रही है. Now few curiosities from I will tell you. We have Ranjana Ratan. She says, you explain so well. Thank you so much, Dr. Singh. So in-depth study. Truly amazing. Yes, it was truly amazing presentation, man. We have Prasant Rakshit. He said, did the Ajanta artists leave their signatures or their names in the paintings? I shall put it there. Names in the paintings. Such signatures are clearly inscribed on the walls in the 11th century Bhojeshwar temple near Bhopal. Do you like to answer it?
Mm, the name of the painter in Ajanta, I'm not familiar. I will not. I will not guarantee, but I do not remember any such name that I found. Sculptors, architect's name is there, and Professor Davlikar once published a paper in Artibus Ashi called Yugdhar, Yugdhar, one master painter of Ajanta. He published a paper, very famous paper, but trust me, I went and looked for that inscription. It is not there. It is
Okay.
not there. It is not there. I do not know from where Professor Davlikar found it, but it's not there. And the name of the painter, if your question is so specific, no. The name of our architect is there in cave number 26, Dharmadatta and Bhadrabandhu. Two names are given. They have been thanked by the patron. Um, Buddha Bhadra was the patron. He has thanked the two architects for having excavated the edifice, the temple, on his behalf. But the painter's name I do not recollect. No, I have not seen.
The architects and the painters, they were two different people, or sometimes the one person does the job of second person also, the second category also.
No, in Ajanta, I told you with one slide that the work was distributed. You know, there was a distribution of work. You have various hierarchy of people doing different kind of things. So different, and more than that, we do not have any knowledge. People have tried to write different kind of art history based on Hindu text and later sources. I'm sorry, I cannot apply all of those sources and information to Ajanta.
So without getting these questions, you have answered this question. Again, Prasant Rakshit says, where many artists jointly painted those stories or each set of a story got depicted by single artist. Any
No,
clue
there was
for this?
guild. Definitely, there were guild working because the concept of individual things did not exist, and even today does not exist. If you are making a gurdwara, you are doing a madrasa. If you are making a temple, individuals do not exist. If you make a temple, call up some artist. He will not necessarily write his name over there. He comes with a group and does your painting. You know, to today also, say so many temples are being made today in stone traditional style, and the artists do not leave their names. You know, the individualism is a modern concept, city based concept, is concept. um, uh, you know, it has its own history, it has its own context. In community work, individualism is not necessarily prized and nobody necessarily wants it.
We have Pramila Kaji. She says that was brilliant.
Thank you.
Where,
Thank you.
where Padma Singh, she has been planning to paint all, 84 these, panels, all the things. So she says that this is very helpful for my artwork. Thanks, Rajesh Singh, RK Singh. So this was Rajesh, and this was his, you know, वो कहते हैं ना गागर में सागर समाने वाली बात. It was a very meaningful, very timely presented paper, and it is going to help everybody. The way we say there is little bit of a skill in everybody's life. So there is little bit of information for everybody who wants to know about Ajanta, whether a common tourist, a scholar, a student, a historian, an art historian, or painter, or an architect. Whosoever is willing to know about Ajanta and Ajanta's painting can learn something from this miraculous presentation of Dr. Rajesh Kumar Singh. Thank you, Rajesh, for coming to
Thank
our
you.
the
Thank
FolkBrain
you.
channel
Thank you.
at the
Thank you
second
for
time,
giving me chance. Yeah, thank you.
and presenting this much needed, very academic, articulate, to the point, power with powerful PowerPoint presentations. Your lecture. Thank you so very much. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.